it's time for our fireside chat with astronaut Cady Coleman. So, welcome, Cady. Cady and I had a chance to, we were co-conspirators recently on a little undersea project that we went down to Florida. Some of you know about it. We did a post about it a while ago. Cady is involved in this, has been to this undersea research base that NASA uses called Aquarius. Anyway, Dalton, you want to put the picture up? This is what we ended up, down in 30, 40 feet underwater. Where's Matt?
Matt's in the back.
Oh, Matt McKenna and Matt Ray's from GoPro. I think Matt from GoPro took this photo. But anyway, this was part of our junket, our test junket down to, it's not really a junket.
We're just planning out the operations and even the cameras and how to use things. I mean, it's one thing to have an experience, but if you can't capture it and share it. And so we did a practice run with the folks from GoPro. It was us and camera equipment that cost more than all of our houses on the boat.
Yeah.
I was very nervous.
So we're going back on May 3rd to Key Largo. 6 miles offshore is the Aquarius research base where NASA has the NEMO program where they train astronauts where they live underwater for up to 2 weeks, correct?
Yeah.
You were down for 10 days, 11 days?
11 days, yep.
Living in this sort of motorhome environment that's 60 feet underwater.
Way smaller than the motorhome. Oh. There was like 6 of you. And I mean, it's very small, but it's actually, it's a really inexpensive, in a way, simulation where it's a little bit dangerous. You have to stay underwater once you've been under for a few hours.
Oh, yeah.
And you can't come up, and so there's a safety factor. There's a mission you have to accomplish. There's a timeline. It's very much like a space mission. And if you're done with your stuff, then you'd better make sure that somebody else doesn't need help with their stuff. And if everybody is cruising along in the timeline, then you should be taking a picture, and it should be a good one. And it's always in this like environment that's small and dark with big cameras. So.
Well, it's like being in the space station because, as you said, there's nowhere to go but back into the space station, back into the the environment, or you're dead. It's significantly weightless. There's no breathing out there without gear, so it's a fabulous training facilities. So anyway, Aquarius Reef Base down in Florida. Look it up and spread the good word.
It's a great testing facility for us, and you'll see a little bit more later on in terms of the journey to Mars. But you don't want to try that stuff out like when you get to Mars. You really need, well, and even just figuring out how to do it as a team and how to do it as a team with the ground, the ground or the surface, and the crew on the mission. That's the kind of thing that we practice there, and it's incredibly effective practice space. And I tell people it's almost better than space because in space, at least that I looked around and saw, we didn't have any neighbors. But underwater, you got to look out the window and see the food chain in action.
Yeah. Well, moving on to the topic at hand, other than my little indulgences into underwater stuff, which I'm obviously crazy about. And so are you.
There's a lot of parallels, space and underwater.
But if you wouldn't mind giving the audience a little more of your background and kind of what got you to here, and then we'll delve into a little bit more of this tapping into the crowd aspect. And
I've also got some space station stuff to show you.
Well, I hope so.
Okay. So I grew up the daughter of a military guy who probably envisioned that his sons might take this path and not me, and so it was kind of a big surprise to all of us. But after he got used to it, he was pretty enthused. So my dad was a Navy diver doing diving and salvage, and in the Sea Lab program, when, in this case, men first lived under the sea, he was the project officer building that facility. So for me to actually go and live in the Aquarius habitat and work there as part of my job was an incredible kind of coming full circle for me. And actually, candidly, he was dying of cancer at the time, and he wasn't the kind of guy who wanted anyone to know that. But it was, I knew that it was important that I got to do this with a bunch of people who run the habitat that worked with him.
I knew him, that's right.
So I think I grew up with exploration in my life and thought it was a normal thing to do. And at the same time, I will tell you, it never occurred to me to be an astronaut until in college at MIT, Sally Ride came and talked. And I see this person that I can identify with, and I just thought, wow, I want that job. Maybe I could try to get that job. And that's why it's so important, all the imagery that we've been seeing this week, all the ways of sharing and social media. It's so many ways to tell the people that are younger and in most cases shorter than me this could be them. And that's a lot of the reason that I came to Dent, was to learn more about how to do that sharing.
Well, that your story is, the fact that you saw this, you wanted to do it, and you made it happen is, inspiring to everyone. And the whole space thing, of course, is extremely sexy.
Well, thank you, Steve.
No, I don't mean it like that. Don't get me wrong. We're pals, Cady.
You need a shovel.
I mean, I'm flattered, but.
Okay, so onto the space station.
Yeah, well, let me ask. Yeah, I'm interested in finding out more about kind of the state of the space program. I know that we've got some questions about that. So yeah, where do we? I know this. One of the questions I want to ask is the space program over? What's going on with that, all that? Because there's stops and starts and budgets and all that. But maybe you can clue us in a little bit on the space station and kind of the state of NASA right now.
That is exactly the right question, because even within my own family, I hear from people, or just say, well, if the space program's over, why are you still commuting between Houston and Massachusetts to see your family? Or now for me, DC and Massachusetts. And what we're doing is that, we have a space station that's up there in space, orbiting the Earth 16 times a day. And this is our proving ground, our place to test things out for the mission to Mars. And the mission to Mars is very real, and at the same time, there's a lot of different pieces to it. And so right now, in terms of the general space program, we're taking all the things, we being NASA's taken all the things that we know how to do. We know how to get stuff up to space, and we know how to get people up to space. And we are handing those things off to our commercial partners who can do it faster and better and more flexibly, and it really can do things that we as the federal government can't do. And that lets us focus on exploration and risks that we actually can't ask private industry to be taking.
Right.
So, and in fact, tonight is, I forget exactly what time, but Orbital Sciences is launching another supply ship up to the International Space Station. And it contains, experiments and supplies and food, and it is the life of the space station, which is our proving ground for that journey to Mars. Now, the other thing that might confuse you a little bit is, at least, it's taken me a while to get my arms around it, is, so we have the space station, which right now we go up and down to the space station with the Russians. And that's because we retired the space shuttle. It was the right thing to do. It really took a lot of time and people and effort, and it almost paralyzed NASA from doing the other further things that we need to do. So we go with the Russians until our new ships are ready, and those are ships that are actually built by Boeing and by SpaceX. So this is the getting people up and down to space. So we know how to do that. It doesn't mean it's easy. It still has to be done very carefully, and at the same time, it's a doable thing. And so our commercial partners have contracts to make those vehicles. First flights are coming in the next few years, and so that'll be happening very, very soon. And then the other program that you might hear about is the Orion and Space Launch System, and that is the new capsule, the new space shuttle, so to speak. But it's not about going to that space station. So here's my fist is the Earth, here's the space station, pretty close in orbit. But we're talking about going back to the moon, going to Mars, places that are just further, they're outside low Earth orbit. And for that, we have the Orion spacecraft. And the Space Launch System is just a bigger, better rocket that can get us those places. So we have a lot going on, and you can see why it's the right thing to embrace our commercial partners. And I think the previous speaker was talking about how, you have to have some really creative private government partnerships to make these things work these days.
Well, that's a challenge, is to all these large independent groups that can do big things and making them all sort of, making the elephants dance, getting everybody the choreography right.
Exactly.
That's not easy.
NASA's
NASA's got that background.
Works?
Yeah, please do.
Okay. So I just like people to know that the space station is very big. So I know you feel bad for us being in the small place, but that's about launching and landing. But up there, it's huge. That is the size. We actually live kind of across the length of the the up and down the 50-yard line there is where we actually live. And it's like 10 train cars that are stuck together. Some of them up, some of them down, but it's about 10 train cars without the seats. So it's really a lot of room up there. And this is the road that we take. I launched and landed. I had 2 shuttle missions, but then I also launched and landed with the Russians. This is a nighttime launch from Kazakhstan. And we're in the tiny little pointy part up at the very top there. It takes about 8.5 minutes to get to space. It's an amazing ride. And the most sort of visceral part of it is really right at the beginning. And then once you get up there, it's an amazing place. As you just saw me sort of sailing through. I don't know if any of our friends from GM saw the patch on Robonaut there on his chest. That big robot had a big GM patch. It's because it was a partnership with GM to build robots so that robots and people could work together. But this is a really quick, minute and a half kind of little film that shows a lot of different aspects of living up there, of working up there, of the view, which is transformational. I don't think it's possible to basically go up there, see things like what you're seeing right now, which is aurora australis, meaning northern lights, but in the southern hemisphere, and see the Earth and see the countries. This is at night. All those bright lights are city lights, and realize that you really can't see the borders, and it's hard to feel like you're just from one place. It seems like a non sequitur, and it's close to St. Patrick's Day, so you'll see a nice shot of Ireland there.
Remarkable.
Let's see. Got a couple more little things to show you. This is the crew that I was up there with. We go up in groups of 3. So when I got there, Scott Kelly and his 2 crewmates were there. 3 of us joined him, and then Scott went back there for a year and just got home. This is Scott on our mission, and I just want to share a tiny bit of what we do and why we go, and why it's hard. This slide shows you why it is hard, because everything is floating. But the things that we're doing up there, a lot of them are experiments and things that we want to understand, how things work without gravity, and also designing the systems that we need to go to Mars. Closed loop water, so that we recycle all of our water. The kids hate this, that we're learning about liquids, what liquids really, really want to do. That I tell people, basically, there's that space toilet. It works, pretty much great, not really incredibly great, but it's easier than any camping trip you've ever been on. And then everything, when you pee, it goes right into this little thing. It goes through a bunch of little cycles, and then it comes right out the little drink machine. And my friend Don Pettit likes to call it drinking yesterday's coffee today.
I think some of you that were on the wine bus may be able to relate to that first white we opened.
It's actually it's perfect. It's perfect water. Oh, really? Oh. It's better than that, okay? It's like perfect water. But seriously, the reason that we go is that we're getting to see, what do liquids really want to do? That slide that showed the big round ball of liquid. Down here, they're in a puddle. In your case, they're going to be in a sort of a bottle with either white or red in there, right? But if you look, closely at the edge of your wine glass, you see there's a little edge. The legs walking up the glass there, and that is, wine molecules or water molecules, wanting to be with each other, wanting to climb up the glass. We don't get to see what they really want to do until we actually bring them to a zero gravity environment. We do experiments in combustion, like on this slide here. On the left is the earth candle flame with a lot going on and measurements we have to make in less than a second. On the right is a spherical candle flame from space, where it's so much quieter because of the lack of lighter things rising and new stuff rushing in. Measurements that we had to make in less than a second, we make in 30 or 40 seconds. So the data that we can get is just stuff you can't get down here. So a space flame. We do a lot of the osteoporosis research alone. When I'm up there, I lose bone 10 times faster than a woman who's 70 years old who has osteoporosis. So what she loses in a year, I lose in a month, unless I do something about it. And so we're doing all these studies. And the good news about that is that it actually is very easy to measure, because we can do that. It happens so fast, we can actually do blood and urine, all those tests. And so I actually came back here with all of the bone that I left with. Really? In terms of the amount of bone. It's probably not the same. It's probably rearranged. If you think of your bones as pipes, I probably have less in the meaty middle and more around the outside. And so thicker pipes, but less connected in the middle. What does that mean? I'll have a physical the rest of my life, every year for the rest of my life. And whenever any one of us has surgery and they take something out, everyone wants to see it. And I'll just, this I think is an iconic picture that really, to me, it's not me, it's my friend Tracy Caldwell. She designed this picture and took this picture actually by herself as a self-portrait. But I think it's the epitome of a human and their relationship with the Earth. And we're looking forward to our relationship with other planets. We already have one. I mean, we're already on Mars with rovers and things like that. And this shows you a little bit about that journey I was talking about, where on the left is close to Earth. That's what we're doing now. You know, close to that, you see the space station up there. We're learning lessons for Mars, which are incredibly related to sustainability here on Earth. So closed loop water, closed loop air, growing things in places where it's hard to grow them, making stuff out of stuff we have a lot of but don't need, like CO2. Those are all things that we need to go to Mars, and they're all Earth problems as well. And so our research really stems both ways, and I come to things like this to basically find people who can help connect me to that innovative community, because even though I'm going to tell you how innovative we are later when you ask me.
That's right, because I mean, I was going to say reduce, reuse, recycle. There's no,
Exactly.
This is the best example you can come up with. I mean, NASA has always been known as a great innovator. And it's interesting to see, I've been very interested in following this, how NASA is collaborating and using outside sources to augment, enhance, and drive new innovation. And Jason Preston's been, he's been at Harvard, you know, this past 6-8 months, and will be there for about a year. And I got to sit in on one of his classes that he and Monica are taking with Kareem Lakhani, who works with you guys on this kind of innovation.
Exactly.
So it's a small world, but we'd love to dive into that.
Well, and those answers to, I mean, the slide before had that sort of journey to Mars on there, which granted, it's a long time away that we'll actually get there, but if we're not working on it now, solving those problems, we won't get there. And it's not gonna be just science and engineering. We need a diverse group of problem solvers, and we need people that think differently. And this is a slide I stole from our new deputy administrator, a neat woman named Dava Newman, where into the word STEM, science, technology, engineering, math, she wants an A for art, and she wants a D for design, because that design process, you know, is something that is incredibly important. And we're very proud. I work now, and we all have jobs in between flights. And my next flight is a long ways away because the line is long. And so my job in between flights is with the chief technologist of NASA. And that is the home of things like prizes and challenges and innovation. And you know, you'll see that we're trying to be better about having it all in one place, so that people who are looking to help us don't have to understand how NASA is organized or not organized. And so if you look at this, it says Solve in the middle. There's a website called NASA Solve, and it is the hub that you're going to see, you know, educational experiments, citizen science, digital innovation. Centennial challenges are our version of like the X Prize. So it really kind of spans, on this slide you see it sort of spans different time frames. Like, you know, it could take years to run a centennial challenge. One of them that's running right now is sample collection on Mars. Design a robot that could go and pick up something, put it back in itself, send some of the data to back to the ground, and analyze some of it itself. That's a year, you know, a time scale of years. We have the NASA tournament challenges right there on the second one that, you know, they take place over a scale of months. And the money involved is like, you know, $1,000 to $100,000, that kind of range, whereas centennial challenges are millions of dollars. And so we are trying to leverage what other people can help us with, whether on the top there, centennial challenges might be more like industries or private companies or small startups, you know, getting bigger. But then in the NASA Tournament League, where it's smaller bits of problems that we're giving out, or the student-focused challenges are quite a short kind of time span. And then our one that I'll talk about at the very end that's coming up in just a month. So we have a whole range of things that we're trying to involve people in.
Okay, so these taking a variety of shapes, different organizations, contests. Maybe tell us quickly about how, like, for example, one of the contests you're doing, what the results of that is. Kind of walk us through that a little bit.
So I've got some lined up here. I mean, I had some slides in here. I don't think we're going to talk about it, but I mean, just that you have to be careful what you ask for and who you ask for it from. It's one of the lessons that we've learned. And so we're taking advantage of as much as we can, communities that are already curated, so to speak, where we don't have to go find people. they have people that are already interested in know what kinds of challenges these organizations look at, and that they've got some mechanisms in place to help solve them. And so these are some of the platforms that we've used to solve some of those problems. It's things like freelancers, Topcoder, Tange. There's a couple there. Incentive, we run a lot of challenges on their platform. This is a challenge that was out there. It sounds kind of gross, but basically we do a lot of science up there, and it's kind of awkward. And they need to know, how much you pee, and how much pee is there. And it's actually pretty hard to be measuring it. Got a big bag full of pee, how much is in there? And so we put a challenge out there.
You're telling me. Sorry.
Back to the wine bus.
Yes.
Anyways, we actually got 2 different solutions that were out of 60 submissions, but the most important thing that we found out was that there were 2 different, basically, silos within NASA that were both looking to solve this problem. One on the human experiment kind of side, and one on the, what are the requirements? What do we need to make sure we can do before we can go to Mars? And by joining those 2 communities together, first of all, they're joined for other projects, and it saved millions of dollars in the little red circle there. I think it says 1.3 to 1.5. This was a really successful challenge when we're going to send a vehicle up to Mars, and there's ballast on that vehicle. It just has to be a certain amount of heavy to do a lot of the aerodynamic stuff it has to do. So, and then we're going to throw that ballast away. What could you use it for? We had a contest, and basically we had some really good ideas of how to, down in the gray there, how to measure some things about the Mars atmosphere on the way down. But it was a shockingly great idea, and it was actually too late in the spacecraft design to implement that idea on that spacecraft. It'll be implemented on other spacecraft, but we learned that you'd better not have nailed things down too early.
Now, that particular winning idea, great idea, did that, I'm assuming, maybe I'm wrong, did that come from someone who is not a professional in this realm or not an engineer, or who, do you remember where?
That one I'm pretty sure is an engineer that is with NASA, and I don't exactly remember, I'm embarrassed to say. I saw him this morning on the slide, but I'm pretty sure he's a NASA person. But we had a design for spacesuit gloves. We wanted a new way to design spacesuit gloves, which is the bane of all of our existence. I mean, you see my fingernails here, but I have lost several along the way, and all of us probably have, because they're just really brutal on your hands. And the winner of that contest was a person that designs the wings for Victoria's Secret models. Wow. And it makes sense. And our, David Clark is the company that makes our spacesuits, and it started off as an underwear company, making, bras and girdles and all those things long, long ago. And now they are the people that make all those orange suits.
Jason and I talk a lot about combinatorial creativity and bringing these disparate things together and connecting the dots. And Lakhani at Harvard, who your team works with, talks about how he statistically mapped out the outcomes of these sorts of things. You may have that graph in here.
I didn't know.
But it shows that they go, well, if you have experts that are knowledgeable in the realm, they come up with good answers. But if you open up that universe to more people at a more diverse set, you will get better answers. Now, you'll get worse answers, but you will typically get a set of better answers far out on the extreme that you wouldn't get otherwise.
And what we found is that, it's a hard concept for everybody to get their arms around in a way. In theory, it'd be great to involve crowds, but then how do you really do that? And what are you going to do if they just if you don't? We found you have to ask the right questions. You have to structure things the right way. We've done everything from hire a facilitation organization that found 2 audiences for us. 250 people, large spectrum, exactly reflecting the demographics of Boston, exactly reflecting the demographics of Phoenix, and then taught them about the asteroid program. The fact that it's a big danger that all of us need to understand more about, and that there are large global solutions that are necessary. And then at the end of the day, found out what they thought about what they learned, and to help us make our decisions differently. So there's everything from that to along the lines of asteroids. Again, we've got a game coming out in the near future that is basically an asteroid game that when you win, and it's designed by some very reputable in the gaming community people, when you win, you get to analyze NASA data. It is data that would take us 50 years to analyze, where you're just looking at, like, does this little curve look like A, B, or C? And so it's easier and faster for the human eye to determine that, and that'll help the computers get faster with their algorithms. So there's that kind of crowdsourcing, but it's hard to jump from your thing that you walk in Monday morning and that's what you struggle with, this is what's on your plate. You know, how do you, as that person, jump out to then say, let's have a contest that involves the world? And one of the ways that we found is good to start is by having innovation within your company, sorry. And that is to throw challenges out to everybody at NASA. It's kind of a little baby step that's been very helpful to us, because then we find out.
It helps you how to engineer the tests, the questions, the programs, and then you can open it out to the public.
Exactly.
Is there a platform, so when you're talking to someone who isn't in aerospace or isn't in the industry, maybe it's friends or family, and they have a business, they need something solved for their business or nonprofit or something. Do you recommend specific platforms? Like frankly, we were very, very early into using Mechanical Turk from Amazon. We did a ton of stuff with their API and everything else, and I found it was like a magic bullet for some things. And I recommended it to a number of people. I know Topcoder was mentioned, and I think that's one of the more prominent sources you use. But is there a recommendation you could, if you're going to try something to solve a problem, check out this? Have you?
I have to tell you that this world of prizes and challenges and using this kind of public crowdsourcing and citizen science is actually a newer world for me, so I don't want to really make a recommendation.
Oh, yeah.
But the place I would...
Recommended by NASA.
Well, NASA, yes. No, but
they love doing that.
Yeah, really. But
Astronaut Cady Coleman says, no.
And then I won't get to wear the jacket anymore. But NASA's known as a leader in this field, and the White House has actually turned to us and made NASA a center for innovation. Because we've pioneered a lot of these things, and because when you actually make them work, you involve so many aspects of the organization in terms of public-private partnerships and thinking about how can we do this instead of why we can't. So there's still hard things to do. I'll tell you, for NASA, the place to go is that NASA Solve website. We're still actually working on it. I won't say that everybody loves it. We actually don't love it right now, and that as we've learned, it's undergoing a pretty major renovation at this very moment.
You can crowdsource design advice, and you can do they're crowdsourcing. You can say, how do we fix this site? So
well, that's I invite you to NASA Solve.
They'll do it.
And we will take, and seriously, we'd love any suggestions. And part of the reason that I am coming to something like this is because, it's hard to operate in our bureaucracy. And you can actually never look outside and still feel like you actually did your job every day, when outside can be so different. And that's part of what goes on in this chief technologist's office, is that we are helping to look outside for folks that are too busy to do so. And then when we find stuff and we get it so that they can see it, then we can give it to that silo, and it can be used by that silo. But it's hard stuff, and NASA is considered to be a leader in it. And at the same time, I'll say that we're always learning.
Right.
I'm just going to see if I have other. There's just a bunch of different innovations that have just save a lot of different time. I guess this one to me is particularly important. It's one of the few things that we found that is really affecting astronauts in terms of health, is that some people are developing increased intracranial pressure. So increased pressure in the brain, it is reflected in eyesight changes. It didn't actually happen to me. But it has happened to several people. And it's the kind of thing we need to know before we go to Mars. The importance of this slide is that we did crowdsource this. We did come up with solutions that are very significant and will be flown in the near future. And at the same time, the person who ran this was basically forced to do open innovation, and now they are our biggest fan.
Really?
Yeah, so I just think that's significant. I'm looking at our clock, countdown with just a little bit to go, but NASA is doing things for the planet, and there's lots of ways for people to get involved. In 2 weeks, anybody that wants to solve one of our challenges, go to that NASA Solve site, look for the Space Apps Challenge. We're going to have a hackathon, huge one. It's called the Space Apps Challenge. Last year it was 160 cities across the world in 60 different countries. I think I don't know, 10,000 people on the same weekend. We're working on 35 problems that we put out there. And I think that all that activity leads to pictures like this, where nobody knew when I was in 3rd grade that I would be in a picture like this. And we are going after those kids and those people, and all of us in this room have the power to use the old and the new to be really successful in this modern world and on the journey to Mars.